The biggest risk I always worried about, really, I suppose, in establishing 100 Hills was I'd been involved with young businesses enough to know that momentum is very important. I'm out there at the start with a green field, literally, and nothing. And I'm telling people I'm going to create some of those beautiful wines the world's ever seen in competition with the Champenoise. That's bold.
It's pretty bold, yeah.
We're up on nearly the highest point, so over 100 meters above sea level, and we're above our amphitheatre vineyard here and our quite famous now Hilltop Vineyard. Hilltop is a little vineyard where all our Blanc de Blancs over the years have emanated from. Business in the modern world really is about continuous improvement. It is not realistic for you to come out with a small team in almost any industry out of the block just be better than everybody else in the modern world. You have to commit to continuously improving, and that is personal, professional, and certainly as a team.
Hello and welcome to Inspired Sounds, Rathbones' exclusive podcast dedicated to supporting and empowering entrepreneurs. In each episode, we dive into the journey of inspirational entrepreneurs and founders who we invite to share the thrills and spills of their own journey. We hope you enjoy listening.
Hi, I'm Kartik Rawal, Investment Manager at Rathbones. Welcome to another episode of Inspired Sounds. We're here on location at Hundred Hills Vineyard in Oxfordshire. We're on site. We're going to meet the founder, Stephen Duckett. Let's go inside. Stephen, thank you, first of all.
You're very welcome.
For hosting us on site, which is, I think, our first ever on-site podcast.
Fantastic.
So it's brilliant. I appreciate it. And I'm sure the listeners and the viewers will appreciate it as well.
Good.
Tell me a little bit about what's been going on over the last few weeks, because I think it's been a busy time.
It has been a busy time. This is an interesting, every year, every vintage at 100 Hills, every year is different. And this year is no exception. First time in September we've ever harvested our grapes. It's normally mid-October, even late October. So really a lot earlier, very warm, hot summer.
Yeah.
And the vines burst their buds early, they flowered early, and they ripened sooner than we've seen before, but they are beautiful, really beautiful grapes. 100 Hills, we have 10 very different parcels of very high quality Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And we've tried to, we expect every year that some of those parcels will develop in different ways, relative to one another. That's part of the plan here. We really want outstanding grapes. We don't need the whole vineyard every year to produce them, but we need some from some parcels. This year, I think every parcel's produced very, very distinctive grapes. So for the last 3 weeks, we have been harvesting those grapes by hand. Everything here is by hand, on these fields at least, and slowly and steadily bringing them in as they became fully sugar ripe. They have great phenolics, very complex flavors and aromas, and the acidity of the grapes, we need a certain amount of acidity to create those vibrant, fresh sparklings that we're known for here, but is in a good place. So we now have, after a couple of very hard weeks, people doing long nights, 7 a.m. starts, midnight finishes. We've got everything into the winery, which is always a good feeling.
Are you hands-on as well?
I am very hands-on. Yeah, I'm very hands-on at this time of the year in the winery. I have a team who are very experienced now picking and bringing the grapes in from the vineyards. In the winery, the biggest impact I think I can have at this time of year is to make sure that the pressing is done quickly, precisely, and exactly as I want it. So our pressing is a little different to what you would see perhaps in much of the rest of the sparkling world.
Yeah.
We're bunch pressing, which is common, but we're bringing in whole bunches and we're splitting the skins, we're taking the juices out the center, and we are pressing 4 tons of grapes at a time. And so we really care. The biggest thing I can do for quality, but after the biggest thing by far is all in the vineyard. Our wines generally, I think, are made in vineyards, not in wineries. In wineries, you're looking to be as minimalist, I think, for us, very minimal interventions, minimalist as you can be, and really keep the quality of everything you've been given from the vineyards.
Okay.
And that starts at pressing. So you want to press quickly and precisely. And here, critically, what we're doing is, the world has changed. If you were in Champagne in the last sort of 100 years, you would have regulations governing how much juice you took from 4 tons of grapes, in fact 20.5 hectolitres for your cuvée, and if you didn't take that, you couldn't call it champagne. Wow. Now that is not a sensible way to do things in the modern world. What is sensible is what we do. So we measure the musts in real time. We have a little lab. 20 years ago, that might have cost you $20 million. Today, it costs you $200,000. And we can measure not just sugars and acids, but critically potassium. And potassium's important because when we're bunch pressing, the reason we bunch press is to avoid taking too many of the tannins that are around the skins of the grapes. And so that's why a lot of your sparkling wines will not have much colour, because the colour's also around the skin of the grapes. So we're trying to just take the juices from the centre. But by monitoring sugars, acids and potassium, we can tell where we're pressing from in the bunch. And that has a big impact on the quality of our wines.
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing at the start of the season is working out parcel by parcel where I think we should be cutting off the press to maximise the quality of the juices we refer to as musts that we're collecting from the pressed grapes. That is, we have a lot of data on that now. We run little algorithms to work out how to adjust our presses to manage that pressing process. And that, I think, makes a big difference to quality.
Yeah.
So I'm mainly in here looking at data, watching what we're doing on the press, tasting on the press, looking at data on the press and working out how we want to, what they call fraction the press.
Yeah.
What we want to collect from the grapes. And that makes a big difference. The rest of the year, I spend all the time out in the vineyards.
Very good.
That's where the quality is. That's where the complexity is. The beauty of grapes, the beauty of wines, and the reason we can make fine wines here is grapes synthesize just these extraordinary array of beautiful aroma and flavor molecules in very small quantities that are very delicate, but our palates are super sensitive at being able to pick those up. Yep. And what you want to do is make sure the grapes in the vineyard have as long as possible to do that and are healthy at the point you bring them into the winery. And so all the work and all the science is out there. In here, plenty of science, but also quite a bit of art. Tasting wines, putting them together into finished wines is not as scientific a process. It relies on your tasting and experience and how you think those wines will project into the future. Out there, it's all science, and I spend a lot of time on that in the rest of the year.
So we've talked a little bit about present day, what's happening right now.
Right now. Just relaxing from harvest.
Relaxing from harvest. And it's incredible listening to you because you clearly have a intense passion for it. Yeah. What I'd love to understand is the journey that you've taken to get to this, because it's not been a straight line.
Never is.
And on top of that, what I'd love to know is a bit of family background.
Sure.
And what's made you into you.
Yeah, sure. Let me talk to that a little bit. I mean, I grew up on the farms in Somerset. So my family have been farming for give or take 1,000 years on the Somerset levels and around.
So your genes.
So in the genes, and seriously very comfortable in a farming community and farming and managing people on farms. I'm not going to write them long documents on what to do. I'm going to show them what to do, and I'm then going to watch them do it, and I'm then going to let them get on with it. I'm going to expect it and see if what I thought happened was. If it's not, we'll go back and we'll do it again and again and again. It's that process. I always call what I do in the vineyard, a lot of what I do managing by walking around.
Yeah.
But you need to see there, you need to touch and feel, you need to show people what you want done, and you need to have people who do it. We've got to do things 100,000 times in a reliable fashion. That is the challenge in this type of farming, very intensive, great farming. But I'm familiar with that. I grew up on the farms. The family made cheeses, grew all sorts of interesting sort of market-grown crops on some very rich soils of the Somerset levels, and had done for many years. So I had that in my blood, as it were.
Yeah.
I turned out to be pretty handy with computers at a point where that was a very useful thing to be handy at. And so, after a stint doing engineering and economics management at Oxford University, I really started using that skill set and used that for the next 25 years of my first career. So starting up young businesses and getting involved first in very young software businesses. They became internet businesses, and they became bigger businesses. So I started off with very small businesses, literally spin-outs from universities, and working with them, and ended up working with some very big businesses. But that was really my first career. I think I got to a stage, I remember it very clearly actually. I was in a meeting in San Francisco. We were taking an American company I'd been involved with public, and it was a big room, lots of people in the room, as you get with these meetings. And it was good conversation, everything went well. I looked around the room at one point and I realized I was a decade older than anybody in the room. And I'm not somebody, as my kids always joke, I'm somebody who's not going to retire in my lifetime. And so, that wasn't going to go on forever. Yeah. The pace, the travel, everything else is at some point, you either got to be all in or you're not in. And that was fine, and I loved it. but that was never going to go on forever. And so my wife Fiona and I had been talking quite a bit about doing something together. For me, that had always felt like it might have a farming route to it somewhere. And it's fair to say Fiona was delighted that farming route was in wine. But it wasn't obvious it would be in wine. So that again, I think a lot of life is about stumbling on opportunity and then selectively picking up on where you want to go.
Yeah.
And, we're big fans, both Fiona and I are big fans of wines and sparkling wine, champagne in particular. And back in 2000, a very good friend of ours who's also a wine enthusiast. In fact, I'm having dinner with him on Saturday, him and his wife on Saturday. He gave us our first ever English sparkling blind.
Okay.
Against some very good champagnes, and I was very surprised at how good it was at the time. This was back in 2000. It was nobody was really talking about the quality of English sparklings back then, and it was also unusual because it had been made in a technical way which you wouldn't have expected. Without getting too technical here, it didn't have a malolactic fermentation, and normally where you have highly acidic wines, you would expect there to be a malolactic fermentation, and it didn't. And it was perfectly balanced. It had a very good structure. And so that was kind of interesting. And we went away and steadily over the next few years, we were busy working. Fiona was doing her PhD in neurolinguistics and I was doing, other things.
As you do.
As you do.
Yeah.
And so, we began to slowly look around at what was happening in the English wine world. And it's sort of a bit embarrassing to say it now, really. I mean, we're sat here after one of the hottest summers England's ever experienced. It took us a few years to work out that it wasn't that the climate was changing, it was the climate had changed. And I think the penny really dropped for me properly in about 2004-05. Oxford University brought out a study, and it was looking at Oxfordshire's temperature records over the last hundreds of years. Because Oxford and they'd done some very clever stuff. They'd looked at people talking about growing particular plants and what the temperatures must have been to have grown those plants and that sort. So they looked at very complex stuff, and it showed what we all now know. Up until the 1970s, flat, and then it starts going up. And the only question is whether it's linear or non-linear, whether it's accelerating change or just linear change in temperatures. And as a byproduct of that study, one of the things that really interested me is when you looked at their monthly data, it was startling. And what was startling to me was they were looking in 2000, and it was showing that the temperature during the growing season for a crop like grapes, call it April to October, was 2 degrees warmer on average than it had been in the 1970s. Now, 2 degrees is a huge number in wine. Give or take, it's a half of the latitude of the wine world. It's a huge number. And so that really got my attention. And I began to take more seriously the idea of searching for land in England that was the best land we could find to make world-class sparkling wines into the next few decades. And the first thing you do, I think, when you do that, once you've convinced yourself it's interesting, is, when you build any business, is to surround yourself with people who know what good looks like. And I always thought that would be a team of a few people. But in 2009, we stumbled again, and stumbled is a loose term. We were pretty proactively stumbling on a fantastic gentleman, Dr. Michel Salk, and Michel had grown up in Champagne. He'd made Cristal for Roda. He taught winemaking out of Montpellier to the modern generation of Champagne winemakers. And he also, critically for me, and perhaps most critically for me, he'd been sent out by Roda to establish Roda Estate from scratch in the United States. He'd found land in the Anderson Valley in California. He'd built a winery, planted vineyards, made beautiful wines, Hermitage and Quartet out there. So in Michel, we found one person who could do everything we needed to do. And I spent the next sort of 7 years with him doing what was really an old-fashioned pupillage of winemaking. Relying on the generosity of many of his friends in Champagne and some very good winemakers in Champagne to learn how to make really high quality sparkling wines. And so we spent the next 3 years searching around England looking for land, and we looked at 100 in real detail. And there were several where, the CIVC who were doing our lab testing of some of the soils and would ask Michel, where in the Côte de Blanc in Champagne is this from? The soils really are identical. And, they come under the channel. They emerge in about 8% of the world's chalk actually is in northern France and southern England. And these chalk formations, familiar names like Burgundy and Champagne, they come under the channel, re-emerge in South Downs and the Chiltern Hills and other spots in southern England. Very interesting for grape growing. And so, knowing you had the same soils and knowing you had the same temperatures, I used to say as Champagne in the post-war period, in fact, we've grown grapes at temperatures in Champagne in the 1990s and 2000s. For me, that was then all science. That if you have the same soils and it's better than that actually, because although the Australians in particular have spent a lot of money trying to convince people that Chardonnay is one thing and Pinot Noir is another thing and Cabernet Sauvignon is a different thing. In fact, there are many, many different types of those broad varietals. I mean, there are thousands of types of Chardonnay, thousands of types of Pinot Noir, and they're all quite different. And so I knew from knowing that the soils were the same and the climate was the same, exactly which types of Chardonnay, which types of Pinot Noir had produced absolutely beautiful wines in those conditions. So normally you plant a vineyard and it's 30 years before you know what you've got. You know, by the time you've grown the vines, you've made some wine, you've tasted it a few times, it's a long time. That wasn't the case here. We knew that the romantically named Chardonnay 95 claim that put up on the hillside, planted in that position, we knew that would do well in that. And we knew we could make beautiful wines from it if we paid attention in the winery. So that was really what it was all about for me. You know, that part was all science for me. And that was not risky. You know, I mean, we'll talk a bit more about this, I'm sure, as we go through. But for me, managing entrepreneurial ventures and entrepreneurship generally is mostly about thinking carefully about risk. What it is you do better than anybody else, where you should take risk and where you should do everything you can to mitigate and manage risk. But I was very comfortable taking the risks of planting vines in England to create high quality wines. I was sure that would work. Whereas most of the people at the time were saying, you're crazy planting vines in England. That I wasn't worried about. There were other risks I was very worried about, and I spent a lot of time mitigating and managing those.
What were those risks?
Well, I always felt the biggest commercial risk to the project, given it's a family business and we're relying on our own resources, was the build of the winery. It's a large, complex construction project in the many millions of pounds. And I am well aware that those projects can get away from you and end up costing 3 times as much, which commercially would have been pretty tough for the business. And so, again, you know, a lot of that's about getting a good team around you, but it's also about focusing. And I spent the best part of 18 months every day focusing on making sure that the building firms we were working with were doing exactly what I wanted here.
So hands on again.
And we're not going to run out of time or need more money, or, you know, there's a myriad, everybody's done building projects, there's a myriad of daily small decisions where you can spend a bit more money or sacrifice quality, and I wasn't going to do any of that. And so that was a big risk area for me. You know, I think after that, you know, the risk area is all about, and always is maybe, about teams. Building high quality teams, people you can work with. You know, I'm particular to work with. I'm very hands-on, and I'm very particular about the way I approach things. I believe in the scientific method. I like, there's a certain way of finding the truth. I'm also very, very committed to continuous improvement. And if that's not for you, you're definitely better off not working with me.
Fair enough.
And so I have to find people in very different businesses, you know, out in the vineyards, in the winery, branding and marketing and selling our wines around the world, who can work with me and are also good at what they do. And that's the key to any, you know, that's common in every business I've been involved in my life. But that is a serious risk. In a small business, if you get that wrong, it can set you back a year or two. And that may be too much, you know, depending on how fast your markets are moving and how fast you need to move. Now, this is a lot slower than the markets I operated in software and technology and the internet previously. But nonetheless, it can still cause you some challenges. And then there are some risks you've just got to decide whether you're prepared to take. The biggest risk I always worried about, really, I suppose, in establishing 100 Hills was I've been involved with young businesses enough to know that momentum is very important. I'm out there at the start with a green field, literally, and nothing. And I'm telling people I'm going to create some of those beautiful wines the world's ever seen in competition with the Champenoise. That's bold.
It's pretty bold,
But, you know, I think that if you start properly and seriously and you show people how you're going to get from A to B, you know, the analogy I always tell is my plans are to eat the elephant. And, you know, somebody comes to me and they say, well, it's huge. How on earth are you going to eat the elephant? Well, I'm not, of course, going to eat the elephant all at once, but I'm going to eat a lot of elephant sandwiches. And, you know, I'm going to eat those elephant sandwiches day after day after day after day. And that's how I'm going to eat the elephant. So, you know, that's what it's all about. And if you do that in a robust way and you show people the path to eating the elephant, you can get people to work with you in entrepreneurial ventures. It's exciting, it's engaging, it's life affirming. But nonetheless, there are critical points where if you lose momentum, it gets very hard. And the one piece I know I'm here, we create beautiful grapes every year, but in very differing volumes. And I know you are going to have good years and bad years in the vineyard. There is nothing anybody can do. All I ask of my team, my vineyard team, is they work hard at doing the best they can with what nature gives them. But it's possible you start out randomly with 3 coin tosses of tails, and then might get hard.
Yeah.
But at some point, you've just got to take that on and think about how you mitigate that if that happens. It didn't happen. 18 was the first real year for us, easiest vintage to that date ever in English history, and 19 was also extremely good.
So good
now,
stuff.
that's just lucky.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you need a little bit of luck along the way. You need to meet the right people. Sometimes you need the right, make the right connections. Sometimes you need the weather to go your way.
Yeah.
You can't rely on that too much, but that's life. Sometimes you've just got to live it. That was a big risk for me. So there were a few things that were really risky, and but lots of things we thought we could mitigate and manage.
Fantastic. So you've mentioned Fiona.
Yes.
So, some of the most successful entrepreneurs that I've worked with come in pairs. It's quite incredible. There's a yin and a yang.
We come in pairs. That's right. Yes.
Is that the case? And
it is the case.
How do you manage the business life, the winemaking life, the personal life?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I suppose Fiona and I have been together a long time. We met when we were teenagers at Oxford at Hertford College, and we know each other well. I think everybody who knows this, it'd be fair to say I'm a little more confident and risk-taking than Fiona. But she's very good at assessing risk, understanding risk and managing it, and making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed in terms of what we need to do legally from a regulatory point of view, in terms of employing people here, and in terms of just working with me to reality check what we're doing at different points in time. And I think everybody needs that. Entrepreneurship is for sure about seeing the world in a different way, in a confident way, in a particular aspect of what you're doing. But you need people around you who, without being deadening to that journey, understand that there are risks that you can mitigate and that you should be thinking about and watching how they evolve. And so we work together extremely well around the business. And she's involved day to day as I am. Yeah. But I mean, as you can imagine, with things like construction projects, 2 eyes are better than one. And so those sorts of things we've worked very, very closely on.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Why don't I show you the vineyards, Kartik? That's where really all the action is out there. And it's where a lot of what's special about 100 Hills actually resides, in what the French would call their terroir. Yeah. But a terroir isn't just a concept as some people think about the land and about your place and location. It's about how you behave on that land, how you treat that land, and how you treat the vines in this case. It's the critical part really of what we do here, and why our wines have won so many plaudits and received such acclaim in such a short period of time.
Fantastic, let's do it.
Let's do it.
So the mist has lifted.
Yeah.
And we can now see this absolutely beautiful site.
Yes.
Stephen, tell us, where are we amongst the vines?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is, we're high up in the Stoner Valley in Oxfordshire, just between Oxford and Henley. And these are 2 sides of a steep chalk valley. And we're up on nearly the highest point, so, over 100 metres above sea level. And we're above our amphitheatre vineyard here, and our quite famous now Hilltop Vineyard. Hilltop is a little vineyard where all our Blanc de Blancs over the years have emanated from. It's not a coincidence that it's really, these are Chardonnay vines that in very, very poor soils here, and we know that they produce sort of really beautiful, they have to struggle. And vines have got to struggle if they're going to produce good fruit, and they really struggle up here. It's also, valley vineyards are a little different from how you think about most topography. They're warmer at the top than the bottom because the cold air, especially at night, is always sinking away and sinking down the valley. So this is probably the warmest vineyard, and the vineyard where the soils make the vines struggle the most. So it produces these very rich Chardonnay grapes year after year. And if you're going to make a Blanc de Blanc, that is a sparkling just with Chardonnay, you need that struggle.
That's
you need that
place.
Complex grapes. You need and you need warmth to make them really ripe enough to stand on their own without the help of Pinot Noir to sort of add body and context to the wine. So it's a very special vineyard for us, just under 3/4 of a hectare, and every year we make this delicious wine from it.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. And what intrigues me is you spent quite a long time trying to find this spot.
Yeah.
What made you settle on this?
Well, look, it's all in the detail. I suppose there are lots of things you need in England, in any wine region, I'm sure, to be successful and make really high quality grapes. The key is the vines have to struggle, but first of all, they have to survive the frost. For a short period in the winter when the vines are dormant, we can be very relaxed. -25 and the vines will still be quite happy. Really, in this part of England, you don't see -25.
No.
So that doesn't really concern us. How cold it gets in the winter doesn't matter. What does matter is it's chalk. And so if it rains and rains and rains, as it can do in the English winter, it all sinks away down to the aquifer, which is very good. Because vines, one of the things they won't tolerate is being in water. So the roots need to stay dry. But after that, as the buds burst, they then become vulnerable to frost. This is late April, early May. There's not a lot of frost risk in that time, but you can get frost in this part of England. The good news is for us is they're all ground frosts.
Okay.
And why does that matter? I suppose for two reasons. Firstly, we're on steep slopes so that those frosts as they occur roll away like water and they collect down in the valley and they funnel away off down the valley. But more importantly than that, we're near the Chiltern Ridge. And so on the other side of that ridge, 100 metres or so down, is an RAF base called Benson, which I think is the coldest place on the planet. And at Benson, you get some very cold nights. That time of year, it will be -3, -4. -3, -4 in this vineyard, everything's destroyed. But they're ground frost, and so there'll be an inversion layer and a bit of warm air about maybe 15 metres, 20 metres, 25 metres above the ground. And so at the head of this valley, the air's warm. And that warm air drifting down on those cold nights keeps the temperatures here in a range where we don't have to worry about frost. So that's very important topography for why we're specifically here. I think we looked at vineyards all over southern England, again, chalk valleys. And the other reason we're really where we are here in Oxfordshire is the big challenge in English viticulture to having beautiful wines is to have beautiful grapes. And to have beautiful grapes, you want to keep them clear of mildew and botrytis. Mildew and botrytis loves dampness, damp water. You can see we've cleared away in these vines all of the leaves around where the fruit grows at the base of the vine. But above that, this part of the world is pretty dry at that time of year. September, October, when our grapes are ripening, it's relatively dry here. It's good being near the coast in the spring for frost risk. The sea helps mitigate your risk there, but it's a little bit damper in September, October, and it can be harder to control mildew. So on balance, we are here because we can keep grapes healthily on the vine year after year for 100, 110, 120 days and give the grapes time to develop real complexity and intensity.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing up here. Let me show you in the vines.
Stephen, when you landed on this spot, I can imagine there was nothing here. It was a bare patch of land.
Bare patch of land.
So
yeah.
What made this spot think that you can realise your vision from here?
Yeah, look, I think that's really important. I mean, if you're going to start any business, you need to, we talked about a little bit about it earlier, you need to have a distinctive edge, a distinctive angle to what you're doing. The wine world is the most crowded market in the world, so why would you establish wines in England? Well, we talked a little bit about climate change, and the climate has changed. And we now have the perfect conditions to grow these Chardonnay vines and Pinot Noir vines. And we have these soils that are really special. I mean, steep slopes, you can see just how steep it is here, and really no nutrients for the vines and no water draining away from them. That's what a vine needs. Vines are very vigorous plants. And so you really need them to struggle to create beautiful. And I think when you walk around this vineyard and you see the land and you see the fact that nobody can grow crops on it, nobody can put horses on it. It's land that screams out for vines to me. I mean, for those people who've been around the wine world, there's definitely the woods, the beautiful ancient woodland around here is reminiscent of maybe parts of the Napa Valley or the Montagne de Rosse in Champagne. Those are key elements to our landscape here. And when you look at this landscape, you can see, but it's not about what you can see. It's about doing all the science. It's about really understanding the soils, really understanding how air is going to flow around this vineyard when the vines are established. And as we went more and deeper into that, we became more and more confident this was a really interesting spot. And then we engaged, advisors. We talked about knowing what good look like. Pierre-Marie Guillaume, who runs Guillaume Nurseries down in Burgundy, one of the world's most knowledgeable men on plant genetics for vines, for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay vines, came out here, spent a week out here. We had pits, we had data, looking at exactly what vine would work well here, exactly what type of Chardonnay, exactly what type of Pinot Noir, and exactly what rootstock, because they're all on different rootstocks. I mean, these look lovely, healthy vine trunks today, but when they arrive, they're little sticks.
Yeah.
They get planted in the earth, and the vines are so vigorous. This is what results. But there are an immense number of choices you can make, and it's just getting in. Perhaps all businesses we were talking about. The need for continuous improvement. You've also got to start with a lot of detail, and there just is a lot of detail in any modern business today, I think. I mean, what's beautiful about this, if you go into the soils, there'll be just this is chalky soil. There's very little soil here, 30, 40 centimetres of soil. You can just break it up in your hand, and it's just like the chalk you write on a blackboard with. That is what we've got here. And the vines find that hard to operate in. It stops the vigour, helps them focus on fruit, helps them produce beautiful wines. But, there's an awful lot of detail. The orientation of the valley is very important. That prevents southwesterly winds really demolishing vineyards in September and October, when we can get gales come across England when the vines are fully laden with fruit. You need some protection. You need these steep slopes. You need these poor soils. And then, as ever in life, there's a lot of work. And as I say, in the vineyard, mostly by hand. And that again is, it's not going to be something everybody can do or execute. We're working with best part of 100,000 vines, and taking leaves off them, tying them down, pruning them by hand, harvesting them by hand, parcel by parcel, treating them in different ways. This is the only parcel you'll find straw under the vines. It's doing a very specific job for us here, and so just a lot of raw detail. And every year, as we learn more and more about our land and our vines and where we are, we change little things, and slowly but surely we get better and better grapes year after year.
Fantastic. And tell me, if so you said this year was the earliest harvest that you've ever done. So,
it was, yeah. We've never seen a harvest start in September, and certainly not finish in September before.
So if that continues, if that trend continues of climate change, is there a possibility that these turn from sparkling wines to still wines?
There certainly is. I mean, I get asked that question a lot. Why do I make sparkling wines? Well, the answer is about the tannins in the grapes, and we're not being able to get them fully ripe because we haven't got quite enough temperature over the season. And so if we bunch press them in a way to avoid those tannins coming into the juices, then we could create these beautiful wines. But if it was warmer, sure, then we could get the tannins into the right place. We could crush the grapes and make beautiful still wines. These are exactly the same vines that make beautiful still wines in Burgundy. And so, look, if it was an average of, say, 1 degree warmer over the course of the summer than the normal baseline, I'd be making still wines here. This year we're standing here. Could I have made world-class still wines? Possibly for the first time I could have done. Wow. This is certainly the first time in this vineyard. In other places in England, people have little microclimates where they've been doing that for a little while, and there's some very good still wines coming out of different parts of England. Here, I've never felt we could get the grapes into the right place to make world-class still wines until this year. If we'd have left these grapes on the vine until maybe the middle of October, they'd have had a little more alcohol, but the tannins would have been a lot riper. We could have crushed them and made really beautiful Burgundian style still wines. So I think my future probably does lie in that. Certainly, when we first started out, our first vintage, as I say, first real vintage, 2018, everybody talks about how that was 1 in 100 years. It was a beautiful summer and carried on into a beautiful autumn. And there was article after article on the best year ever for English wine and how this would never be seen again. 2020 was warmer. 2022 was warmer again. 23 was as warm as 2018, and 2025 is the warmest yet. That doesn't look like 1 in 100 years to me.
No.
The question is, how quickly is our temperatures changing, and is our climate changing? And from what I can see, I have to say that probably is much quicker than I had anticipated. I think I will be making still wines, but for now, I'm going to focus on making the world's best sparkling wines.
Fantastic. Stephen, that was amazing.
Good. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
It's very much.
Special out there. I couldn't show any grapes today, unfortunately. They are gone for another year. But it's very special out there, and we're very lucky to be in the heart of the English countryside here. We're surrounded by ancient woodland, and it really feels quite magical, even at this time of the year.
Wonderful. So I've got a question. We have a lot of entrepreneurial clients.
Yes.
And what are your top tips for some of those clients? Maybe not those who are along the well along the journey. They've done it. They've got their own tips to provide. But people starting out, what would be your sort of advice to them?
We've talked about some of the themes, as we've chatted away. But I suppose if you're going to set out on a journey like this, anything like this, you need to really sit down and be serious about where you have advantages that other people don't have.
Yeah.
That the business world is full of risks. It's very competitive out there in any industry, frankly. And I always liken competing in the business world as Alice in Wonderland's Red Queen races. I mean, you're running faster just to stand still, and it doesn't matter what you do, that's true. And you better work out why you can run faster.
Yeah.
Now, I think what we do here is quite complex in a number of ways, and I think the climate is changing in a way that gives me an advantage. Mm-hmm. But you need to be sure you understand those opportunities. And then, as we talked about a little bit earlier, about the risks involved around that and how you mitigate those. A lot of those are often about financing. Do you really have the finance to take this to where you want to get to in whatever shape the world presents to you? The world doesn't always present the shape. When you go into the world, when we bought this in 2012, it looks unimaginably different in 2025. In some ways that have helped us, and in some ways that definitely haven't helped us. But it looks very different. So you've got to make sure you can stay the course, because both yourself and financially.
Yeah.
So that's certainly something to think about. I think the other thing, sort of again along the lines of the Red Queen races, certainly I get a lot of young entrepreneurs come to me. In fact, I've taught entrepreneurship at Oxford University for a period of time. And, what I would always say to them is, along those lines is business in the modern world really is about continuous improvement. Mm-hmm. And if you are an entrepreneur with a small team, you better commit to that and be serious about it. You are not going to, take what we do at Hundred Hills. I am not going to create a world-class wine out of the blocks in the first vintage I present. Mm-hmm. That is not serious. But if I continually improve and surround myself with good people and learn quickly and aggressively, year after year after year, in 25 years, can I do that? Maybe. So that is what I mean. It is not realistic for you to come out with a small team in almost any industry out of the block, just be better than everybody else in the modern world. Unless you've got some incredible intellectual property, and even then, probably not. You have to commit to continuously improving. And that is personal, professional, and certainly as a team. Team here get tired of hearing that, maybe, but it's serious, and I keep reminding them that. Yeah. So I think that's true for any entrepreneur and any other scenario.
It's a bit like the British cycling team.
Multiple minimal gains.
Exactly.
But yes, that's absolutely right. So that's where we are now. I mean, we're basically producing beautiful wines, and they sell around the world. They sell in Japan, the United States, beautifully. They sell to top restaurants, top hotels here.
Yeah.
Critics love our wines. So what we're doing now is just turning the dials. I talked earlier about the analogy. Again, the team get tired of hearing about elephant sandwiches, but there are still elephant sandwiches to eat. And we are turning the dial on little things that we do year after year. Certainly in winemaking, certainly in the vineyards, certainly in the way we present ourselves to the market. And those are probably good generic pieces of advice, whatever business you're in.
Yeah. And through your journey, has there been any time where you've been really afraid of what might happen next?
Well, look, I mean, I suppose, I think in this particular journey with Hundred Hills, we've had a very good experience where we've met challenges. They've been challenges I felt able to manage. I think, in 2016, obviously, the decision by the country to leave the European Union presented some problems for farming, challenges for farming. At that time, we were set up to rely on grape pickers coming from all over Europe to come and pick our grapes. It was clear that may become more challenging. But, in that instance, I set up a small business here that has grown and went from 8 people now, 50 people, who are a team who work not just here, but also in other vineyards around the area. And so that's what I mean about management. Those are mostly things I can mitigate and manage. I suppose in life, before that, and we haven't really experienced one of those in this journey so far, sometimes there are forks in the road.
Yeah.
And, I think sometimes, not always, sometimes you're conscious of that fork and there's something coming and a decision coming that is going to make a big difference to the way your life divides.
Yeah.
And, I think most of the times I've been, I'm not so afraid of too much, but, those are the moments where you think, gosh, this is a big moment. I'm going to have to deep breaths. Goes one way, it's going to be much more challenging than if it goes the other way.
Yeah.
So, some of those for me actually have been in the earlier stages of my life. I mean, you have younger entrepreneurs or budding entrepreneurs, watching this or listening to this. Some of those early experiences are very challenging. Whether I get the results I wanted to from Oxford, which would enable me to do the things I wanted to do, whether I got the roles out of Harvard that I wanted and I knew would allow me to do what I wanted to do. Those are moments where the path divides.
Pivotal moments.
And a lot of those happen to be in an earlier stage in life, really, I think. And so I'm very sympathetic to young people facing those. There's a lot of pressure on you. You feel a lot of pressure, and you're right, there is a lot of pressure. I mean, the only thing I would say, I think, when you look back is that probably, what I say to my own children is things that are never quite as good or as bad as they appear. Stuff turns up which gets in your way and makes things hard, but somehow down the road it changes you and it creates different opportunities.
Yeah.
So I think, really the key, certainly in entrepreneurship is resilience and being able actually to work through those moments of fear and those big changes. And resilience is something I don't think, we focus on as a society. I'm not sure we focus on enough. But certainly for people who are younger perhaps, or maybe they're at the second career, as this is for me, are thinking about these sorts of careers, you need to be confident about how resilient you are. You are going to get knocked about.
Yeah.
And some people have had experiences and are more comfortable with that than others. Sometimes that's character, sometimes it's early life experience. It's always dangerous, I think, if you've never been knocked around when you're in your teens. You need something should have happened that made things a bit hard. Otherwise,
yeah, I think
it's tricky.
Yeah,
could be tricky.
Yeah.
So I think that's a very important. Resilience is a very important theme, I think, in entrepreneurship, and it's something we ought to be more actively engaging with as a society. Sport is very important at a young age, of course.
Yeah.
And there are other things as well, but it's something that you see less of, and you worry. Without that resilience, it's very hard in modern business life. You are going to get knocked about.
Yeah, it's a similar message that I hear from a lot of our clients and a lot of entrepreneurs, is that you will suffer knockbacks, and you just have to get on with it.
That's right.
My mum and dad still tell me, just get on with it.
Just get on.
Stop moaning about it. I tell my kids that, which is great.
Exactly, yes.
Stephen, if there was one thing you could have done differently in your life, not just with 100 Hills, but your previous career, what would that have been?
Gosh, well, I think with 100 Hills, I wrote plans for this business back in 2010, and we've had a remarkably good run at executing against those plans. And I think in many ways we're in places we could never dreamed of being by 2025. I think if I look back at the progression of this business, and it's probably again for entrepreneurs around the world, I and in England particularly, I think is relevant. I think if I was to do one thing differently, I probably started to go out internationally sooner here.
Okay.
We've just started to do that. And we're having some really good success. We've had a terrific reception in Tokyo and in Japan. Our wines are being really well received in the United States. We're just about to have our wines presented in the French Laundry in California, which is a wonderful place to have our wines presented. We have our wines across a lot of the European Union now, certainly in Italy, a big following in Italy, a growing following in Scandinavia. I think at the start of this journey, I was very focused on our local market and making sure we could raise the awareness here and build a brand that we could then take out to the world. I'm not sure that actually is how modern brands evolve. You're so able to communicate internationally in such a different way than you used to be able to do, that I could probably have gone internationally sooner.
Yeah.
And in some sense, that mirrors my life and career. I mean, I have worked around the world. Early experience of doing that is very, very valuable. Could I have done more of that sooner? I definitely could. There is so much opportunity around the world today, that getting that international exposure, both in the early parts of your career, developing it through the middle parts of your career, and in new businesses is probably the one thing I would, looking back, I would put more emphasis on, and I'm currently putting a lot of emphasis on. Here it provides us, we could certainly sell all our wines within 50 miles of where we're sitting, but I think for the long-term future of the business, for its resilience, for its genuine, if it's to be genuinely sustainable, we will probably at some point need to rely on the diversification that having global markets brings us. And, particularly ours are very celebratory products. You've got some beautiful wines here that people celebrate at all sorts of special occasions with. But nations aren't always celebrating. It can get tough for times. And you perhaps at that point need markets where people are in a different frame of mind. And so that's where we're focusing at the moment, spending a lot of time. Also, if you want to build businesses internationally, build out businesses internationally, you don't do that from behind a desk still. You've got to be out there. You've got to be meeting people. You've got to be building relationships, long-term relationships. It's got to be a repeated interaction. And we're currently very focused on doing that in what I think will be our core markets in Asia and the United States and in Europe.
Fantastic. And if I asked you a question around the biggest sacrifice you've ever had to make?
Yeah, look, I think I mean, I always hesitate to give this as an answer because every entrepreneur knows this is the answer. You really need to pay attention to your family. And, these are very intense things to do. And they're going to take a lot of time and a lot of commitment from you personally. And that is going to limit, inevitably, some of the time you spend with family, especially family that's growing up. And so managing that as a personal risk is something you need to spend a lot of time on. And, you find no shortage of entrepreneurs who would say they had failed at that, and some who've managed to manage it. I've been lucky enough, partly perhaps because Fiona's been so involved in the business. Yeah. And in fact, today, two of my daughters work in the business, to been able to manage that. And so I think family businesses are interesting in that sense, as a way of managing that particular risk of entrepreneurship. They're obviously an interesting way of managing it. You have the family involved with you, rather than
just bring them to you.
Just bring them to you. And the two daughters who are involved today, love 100 Hills, and they do. They're very, very involved day to day with Fiona and I, which is a complete privilege. Yeah. And something we all enjoy. So, but that over the course of my entire career, and certainly here, is always something I've focused on managing. But the biggest sacrifices are always around that. Yeah. There are things you are not going to be able to attend. There are times when you are going to have to be in the United States or in Japan or at very important meetings or at critical junctures in the business's evolution where you will not be able to go to the school play or the sports game or some of those lovely things you like to do.
Slightly thankful for, but
or some of those things you'd like to do, but or even but it's or even some of the points where life's challenging for your kids as they grow up. Yeah. So that is something I guess you mitigate by managing the two of you, not just one of you. Yeah. But those are definitely the hardest things you do, I think.
And we've talked about the present. Yeah. We've talked about the past. Yeah. In terms of the future, you've mentioned two of your daughters are in the business. Yeah. Is that the future?
Well, who knows? I mean, I want them to do what they want to do. Yeah. And this is a very interesting experience for them at this stage in their lives and careers. But I mean, they may well go on to do different things. So I would love this business to be intergenerational. Yeah. That is. I think something that I would love to see. It is certainly wine businesses have a long history of being intergenerational, and you can sort of see why that care and attention that comes from living somewhere, caring for the land, making products from the land, and then presenting yourself to the world in that very authentic and authentic way is something that works well for a family unit potentially. Yeah. But intergenerational transfers of businesses and wealth are all complex and tricky issues, as you at Rathbones know well.
We know that well.
You know that well. Yeah. So we shall see. I want them to do what's best for them, and we will manage and develop the business in a way that hopefully will allow it to remain intergenerational if that's what the family wants to do.
Fantastic. Yeah. And you mentioned wealth. A brazen plug for our own business.
There has to be one.
we are a wealth manager. There has to be one. We are a wealth manager. What does wealth mean to you?
Yeah, look, for me, it's very clear. I think wealth has two facets for me. One is there's an insurance aspect to wealth. It's making sure that the family is protected and insured from the ups and downs of life, and some of the most serious ups and downs of life. So that is important. I hope we all remain healthy and fit and what have you. But those things can be very challenging. And on the slightly more positive side, it provides you with that freedom to choose how to live your life, and that's what wealth means to me. It's having the freedom. So the interesting I suppose, aspect to that, I do talk to younger people about particularly, is that those numbers are different for different people.
Yeah.
Okay, so, how much insurance do you need? Insurance is a good analogy in that sense. How much do you really need? You need some, but you've all got to decide how much they are. And in terms of freedom to choose, well, people only want a sort of constrained sense of that freedom. That, some people want to go and build multi-billion-dollar tech businesses and need quite a lot of capital perhaps to do that. Or as we are here, I wanted to create something very special in the English countryside to allow me to create some of, finest wines, hopefully, that have been made certainly in this century. And that requires quite a lot of capital. But that's given me the capital I was able to accrue in the early parts of my first career, have allowed me to do this. And that for me is what, wealth is all about. It's providing that freedom to choose and to do things and live your life in a way that is really interesting and fulfilling and presents opportunities for you and family and those around you.
Fantastic.
Those are really the two aspects to wealth for me.
That's a great answer. It's
Thank
a great
you.
answer. I just want to say I've been fortunate enough to taste some of your
Very good, yes.
and they really are fantastic.
Thank you. That's very
They
kind.
really are.
We've been able to create beautiful wines here. I mean, we were talking about it up in the vineyards, but it's a very special location here. We've been, climate change is going to be about adaptation and mitigation, and we do both here. We win awards for what we do with the sustainability aspects of what we do here. We've done work for the EU's Horizon Fund, researching how to improve sustainability in vineyards. But at the same time, it's about adaptation. The best place to make fine, sparkling wines today is almost certainly Southern England. It's here. And so now we've just got the responsibility of making that dream become a reality.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Kartik.
really
It's been lovely
appreciate
chatting
it.
to you as always.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Inspired Sounds. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you'll join us again for future episodes. See you soon.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed listening and watching. To tune in and meet our next exciting guest in the Inspired Sound series, press the follow and subscribe button. Goodbye.